Hello, everybody. I'm a representative of the Foundation Metamorphosis from Macedonia, and I'm here with my colleague Barbara Yashari, who will also be available for during this presentation as part of the discussion. We're going to present our experience in the area of lobbying and advocacy in Macedonia. We're dealing generally with the promotion of ICT as a tool for positive reforms in the society, and part of it is promotion of new open source software and open standards. Our presentation is focused mostly on the government's role in the ICT sector and what can be done as part of civil society or any other group who is striving to improve this area when related to the government. So in Macedonia, the government is the single biggest employer and the single biggest purchaser of services and is the single biggest business entity in a way. Because the economic situation is not so good during most businesses depend on the dealing with the government as a big entity to get their job done. So it's also the case with the IT sector. The government occasionally signs strategic contracts with companies from abroad and presents it as their big success, especially as a way to attract foreign investors, which would improve the economy.
What do you mean by strategic contracts?
Strategic contracts means that the government is basically signing some
strategic partnerships with different companies. The government and Microsoft, the government and Alcatel.
I will explain on one particular case. It's the government strategic partnership agreement with Microsoft Corporation, and it was signed in 2003, and it basically meant that Microsoft will open a branch office, which meant that they're entering the country, so more companies will come. Not very many companies came afterwards, but never mind, it was shown as a positive sign. Microsoft promised to localize Windows XP and Office XP as a way to satisfy the need for localized software, because research done in this area, including the research done by Foundation Metamorphosis, which you can take some of the materials here, show that the population does not really, there is not a high percentage of the population which knows the English language well enough to use the ICT technologies, and they require software in local languages, such as Macedonian, Albanian, and others. So Microsoft promised to localize Windows and Office into Macedonia first, and they sold 6,200 licenses for the government administration, and then they donated as much for the use in the educational sector, which is also government control. And they also promised to do training, knowledge transfer, and a legalization campaign. The government said that they have to do this partnership and to accept Microsoft terms because they already use Microsoft's pirated software. So there is no way to escape the obligation to legalize it in a way. Unfortunately, the government never came up during the strategic partnership signing process. It never came up with transparent data about how much of its software is legalized or not, how much is the equipped base of its ICT capacities, and so on. And we tried to raise public awareness about this alongside with some other entities which I will talk later. But it was to no big avail, except that they, as part of our advocacy, they released the contract in public. They allowed us to publish it, except for the parts which are appendices, which define the money terms. So it was not very transparent. You can get the contract from the governmental office for ICT if you want half of it. Then what we have is that on the local government level we have very low capacities, and even though most government bodies use ICT and computers, one of the biggest problems in general ICT use in Macedonia is not the lack of infrastructure per se, but the low level of knowledge and also low level of content, meaning both software and content as things that information in various forms.
This is only local measurements?
Yes, this was the measurement of the municipalities in 2004. In 2005, we had a decentralization law enacted and passed, which made slight changes in the structure of the municipalities. They were more, now they are less, 85, and which transferred a lot of competencies to the municipal level. So, as I will say a little bit later, I will show a little bit later, the municipalities have a lot of power now, as opposed to before. But still, they roughly have the same body of people retained. So this is rather accurate even now, that the knowledge is rather low. Municipalities need capacity building. And this is a little bit newer, and it's on the level of the whole public administration about use of computer platforms by the State Statistical Office. And as you can see, the most dominant platform is Microsoft own platforms, but also there is some use of open source and related products, which is also similar in the business sector and elsewhere, and they are mostly used by administrators for servers and not as client machines. Our research shows that most of the regular users, when they use computers, they use Windows-based computers in all sectors of society. In general, what we can say that in regard to government authorities, there is a low awareness of free and open source software and open standards. In the cases when it's used mainly due to personal initiatives of the staff, like the system administrators. And there is one more thing, although Macedonia received a donation from China of computer classrooms for all schools, and the US aid made a project of connecting them all to the internet. All these computers have dual boot systems, Windows and Linux Ubuntu, but they are mostly using Windows. We have not heard so far of putting the Linux in some sort of use in this whole network of schools, because most of the teachers are also trained in Microsoft technology, and it's prevalent in the educational system from the primary school till the university level.
How much computers do you say that?
There were like 5,000 to 7,000 computers.
And they are already
Yes, they are all installed. Yes, in all primary and secondary schools. They have one classroom per school.
They never mentioned that there is Ubuntu installed on those computers, but they do mention that Microsoft donated licensed Microsoft Windows operating system for them.
And who did the installations? Some
USA, they hired some local company, which also hired some people. Yes. which also has some members of free and open source software community working for them. But the awareness about that aspect was not really prominent. And but also it made the local open source community shut up about the other thing, because they were satisfied that Ubuntu is at least installed there. So it's even though it is actually widespread in a way, it's not used, so it's not widespread. Then, as part of our collective effort on a state level, meaning not only government level, but also including all other sectors of society, and as part of both process of Euro-Atlantic integration, meaning accession to EU and adhering to NATO standards and stuff like that, a partnership, part of the partnership for peace process and other processes which are aimed at democracies in transition, but also as a way of building a roadmap for development in all areas of society. Macedonia adopted a national strategy for information society development, and it was adopted by both the government, the parliament, and supported by the president, which are three branches of government which are most crucial in all these processes. And it was adopted as official state policy document in September last year. It lays down a comprehensive roadmap of development till 2007. You have several strategies here that you can take, but also you can download it from our website or the website of the government office. And it consists of three separate documents: policy, a strategy, and an action plan. The policy lays down the general principles, the strategy lays down the current situation, and the action plan contains concrete projects aimed at which are needed for Macedonia to reach a high level of development. Some of them are implemented, some of them are stated as needed and are expecting a donor response or government response to fund them. I must say that the whole process was very transparent, and it's one of very successful processes of laying down such policy documents, both within the country and maybe within the region. A task force was assembled consisting of government representatives of various ministries and state bodies, business association representatives, academics from various universities, and from the civil society. Foundation Metamorphosis was very actively involved as part of the civil society within the whole process, and we also worked on mobilizing other NGOs and civil society actors, including their input within the whole process. That was done also through public debates, both on the internet, but also debates held in different cities in order to have the more decentralized approach towards the building of the document, and all the document working versions were available online for comments and improvements. That was also part of the requirements made by the donors, which were UNDP and the Foundation Open Society Institute Macedonia, who partnered with the government, which was a coordinator of the process, but it was all done in coordination both with the expert task force and the donors, which required full transparency. So that was one factor that influenced the whole process to be in that way. And the strategy is categorized or divided into 7 pillars, which tackle different areas of society. And one innovation was that an e-citizens pillar was included as a way to emphasize the needs of the citizens as opposed to internal restructuring, for example, of the e-government, which is more focused on the government's working like G2G or G2B. But in order to emphasize the needs of the citizens, the e-citizens pillar also deals with the municipalities as a first level of contact between the citizens and the public administration, and it also stresses some of the areas that we cover today. The principles of building the strategy was that it has to be technology free. So in the strategy there is not specific mentioning of any type of brand or technology, which was a requirement laid in the beginning, because it's also practical, because we have to be humble and admit that we are not really aware of what new technologies can come up which can really replace whatever is right now, but also to safeguard against monopolization and dangers to competitiveness. As I explained, it was based on also the principles of inclusiveness and transparency, and with the focus of serving the citizens. So this is a specific mention of free and open source software within the strategy, which was included. And since this strategy, if it's implemented, will be the basis of building the legislature in the information society area, it lays some ground for further positive development. Also, the open standards are included as a prerogative, and also not in the platform independence, and it's also in according to EU standards and OASI standards, which are mentioned in the strategy as a ground, as a basis for development. There is also one related activity which can be used for lobbying and advocacy, and it's the Freedom of Information Act, or Law on Free Access to Publicly Owned Information. And it defines the standards of communication with the government by anybody who requires some information from them which is not classified. And within this law, various civil society actors attempted to include the principle of open standards. Apart from this, there was a big delay in adopting the law by the government, and the civil society, especially those who will deal with civil rights and promotion of democracy, started a campaign which led to adoption of this law a few months ago. It will be enacted in September. Considering the practice, there has been concerns since the adoption of the government strategic contract with Microsoft that there will be some sort of hampering of use of open standards. And even before the contract was signed, there were public warnings by various actors, both in the media and the civil society. Some newspapers and magazines were more vocal about this, and some online media which are mostly owned by users and are not commercially based. So they are frequented by free and open source enthusiasts. But as we will see in the following examples, there has been mixed implementation of these principles. For example, the government opened a new services portal, which is part of the action plan of the national strategy, but they failed to implement using of open standard documents. All the documents on the portal are in proprietary formats. Then the pension fund is undergoing reform, and all legal entities are required to submit reports to the appropriate government body, and it provides a software for this operation free of charge, but it's only based on Windows platform. There has been outcry from civil society organizations which deal with ICT and open source software, but there has been no response so far. Media focused mostly on the delay in development of the software and laying of the infrastructure, and were not really keen on reporting on this issue, maybe because of saturation with the other one. But there are some examples where individual initiatives or more limited scope of policy making brings some results. For example, if you go to the website of the Ministry of Finance, because their staff uses this type of software, you can also see banners advertising the OpenOffice and Firefox, and also they use server software and web-oriented software. And some of other government bodies use this, but it's not part of their official policy. In many cases, individual government bodies do not have their official strategy laid down. And in this case, the municipality of Belarus, which is probably the most advanced municipality in the country in regard to ICT development, with many successful projects done in cooperation both with UNDP, with Open Society Foundation, and also Metamorphosis and other actors. They actually, their mayor was part of the task force for laying down the national strategy, and because of his initiative, the municipality actually has an IT department. Most municipalities do not have some formal infrastructure in this area, with 4 persons, and they, during the process of development of the national strategy, they followed the same pattern and made their municipal ICT strategy, which is also now an obligation of all municipalities, but this was done even before the national strategy was adopted. They use a lot of free software and open source software for their server platforms. Also, they have a lot of donations of licensed software by commercial vendors. And there are positive examples. Our recommendations from our experience so far we can talk more about some specific issues, but from what we saw so far is that most of the people who are trying to lobby and advocate and do advocacy about free and open source software are coming from a viewpoint of an expert. And most of the people in general, the general public, but also people involved in the policy making and in the public administration, are not really aware of the basic terminology, basic concepts, and some of them are not really aware of basic ICT concepts. Like oftentimes you realize that while we talk about different brands of Linux or stuff like that, you realize that the person you talk to is not aware of what operating system is as a term. So when approaching people first, it's good to assess how much they know in general about ICT, and then to proceed with explaining about what open software is and what's its significance. Also, this is especially true about the media. Most journalists do not have ICT background and need a lot of help in understanding the issues, a lot of patience also by the people who are trying to explain, and a lot of effort. We have been organizing workshops for journalists and seminars on different ICT issues for free for a few years so far, inviting them to have a lecture or a similar activity with an expert in some field in order to also raise their awareness, raise their knowledge, but also help them establish contacts. So often afterwards, these experts are available to the journalists to call and have consultation about various ICT issues. And also, most IT experts focus on a single platform. It's usually the one they learned in school or what was required by their employer. And they're not very aware of what's the development in the open source community if they are not into it already. So it also requires patience. And the policymakers, meaning the members of the parliament, the leaders of the political parties, the leadership of the individual branches of the parties, have very little grasp of ICTs, and usually their idea of development is that if you want to have a computer industry, you have to build computers. So they give up before anything. So they say, well, we are a small country with a few resources. We cannot really aim to achieve the level of US, which is where computers are built. So they don't even bother trying to understand that there is more to ICT than just assembling computers and selling some physical thing to customer abroad. And from our approach, we realized that it's more fruitful to have presenting persistently the information about what you are trying to advocate than to openly confront. Because so far we have no example that open confrontation, for example, about some governmental decision brought results. But if you stress the positive thing about the alternative, and it will, on a long run, it has some effects. I will say more about it in a minute. Some of it's also, these are just basic things about it. If you have some sort of message to transmit, it has to be clear. You have to state that it's what you are trying to communicate, and keep communicating it. It also has to be in a very dignified manner, and with respect even to those people who are seen as opponents. And sometimes these opponents, if they're made aware, they can be turned into allies, or at least their position can be lowered significantly to have the job done. Because free and open source software really provides opportunities for everybody. And especially when dealing with policy makers, most of them are authoritarian personalities. So what works best is appeal to authority, meaning the international or especially the UN standards. For example, when making the national strategy, we often use the quote by Kofi Annan, who said that the World Summit on Information Society should be brand-free. And since this effort was part of the global effort which was to be presented at the summit, we often stressed that the UN standard requires non-branding and technology-free approach. Also, the EU policy guidelines, which are very big tool very significant tool in this area, and especially in countries which are aiming to become EU members, like Macedonia is. This also goes hand in hand with already adopted commitments both on international and on local level. We use those some local policy documents as a groundwork, and also put a firm stance on laying the line between the strategic contract and the whole development of the country, which was during the process within the working group. Of course, if stressing the goodwill of the citizens will provide politicians with food for thought for the next elections, and they will have some arguments to present. And it's very useful if when appealing to all these previously adopted commitments, you can show that these politicians were visionary and envisioned that using open standards is bringing the country closer to the EU, for example, and play on their ego a bit. It's okay they take the credit. It's most important to get the job done. Our activities as part of internal working of the Foundation Metamorphosis in the area of open source software are based on first cooperating with the local open source community and building its capacity, and through joint projects until the time when they are able to function more freely. Although there has been a working open source community for several years, their impact has been less than desired, because most of it is based on enthusiasm and not on coordinated activity. Most often, some projects like localization of this or that software fail because there is only one person who is working on it. And in order to promote open source software to the general public and to the institutions, we are also working on distribution of open source software, especially of localized open source software. In a very short time, we will be publishing a CD with localized versions of major office applications and other useful programs to be used both by the NGO sector, but also by other sectors of society, and in cooperation with the media. We plan to distribute it through a major newspaper distribution network. And building of the capacities is basically meaning that we need more people and more quality educated people in this area. So training of trainers is one top priority. Publishing of both the software and information about it, and also putting an emphasis on new policy guidelines in regard to ICT and tying them up with the whole developmental scheme, and also trying to build up a local network of organizations, and also cooperating with foreign organizations. We are open to questions, and would be happy to provide more information for everyone.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have questions? I think the presentation is really extensive and covers lots of topics.
Do you have the documentation?
Pardon?
Do you have the documentation what happened so far? What have you talked so far? Kind of report or case analysis on Macedonia, what we have been talking about?
A specific report on open source software?
Yeah, I guess what, as you mentioned, it's really covers all the aspects that is going over in the Macedonia. It would be nice if you have a documentation and report on the situation. I was asking about that.
It's no problem. We are one of the projects that we are planning to wrap up in the next several months is the history of internet in Macedonia. As part of it, there will be a report on open source software developments, but at this moment we don't have a specific document dealing with the whole chronology. It's a good suggestion. We might put that as soon as possible online to be of use to anybody who's interested.
But you can download our surveys which are available online related to the generalized situation in Macedonia, where you can see all the different aspects and level of development. Not only regarding open source software, but all aspects of ICT development in Macedonia. And as Philip said, the national strategy is also available online, but you have it here in English if you want to see it and take it.
On our website, you also, if you're a researcher, you can find, as Bartol mentioned, there is also a specific research about the NGO sector, which was one of our main targets for capacity building. And we're also dealing with, we have another program which we did not mention. It's sending e-riders to NGOs, and they are also promoting open source software within the NGOs. I apologize, I forgot to mention our approach to promotion of open software is because we established through our research that most of the operating system based is Windows based. We are promoting free and open source software through hybrid solutions. So we are supplying Windows based open source Office software, and because that's, if we start with let's say with Ubuntu, these people who barely know how to use Windows and Word will be really put off by needing to learn a whole new system. And there is a big level of technophobia especially with the older generation, and most of the public administration, most of the employed people are older. So that's our approach. You can also find information about the e-riders project on our website, but if you have any specific questions, we can supply any type of chronology on the fly, and then post it on the website for the general users. Other questions, or comments, or our experience is very similar with the Croatian experience, but especially with the strategic partnership thing, and we would be happy with our strategic partnership contracts with Microsoft ends in 2007, and afterwards there will probably be some window of opportunity for promotion of other alternatives, also as a way of how can I say, when we raised a little bit of when the strategic partnership contract was being signed, the government said that this contract does not mean that, and they were also under scrutiny of the Anti-Corruption Commission and the Demonopolization Commission. They said that this doesn't mean, they specifically stated that this contract does not mean that Microsoft has a monopoly, that other technologies can be used within the government administration and so on, but their main goal is to legalize what they already use. So if you have some experience in lobbying and advocacy in this area, especially with using the EU experiences, it would be great to hear.
Maybe we will have time for discussion after the Bulgarian experience also, to analyze the similarities and differences and what could be done maybe in common. So if there are no more questions, I suggest to make a short 10-minute break and then continue with Bulgarian experience and courses for administration and with Okay, thank you very much. Значи, кафе, чай, макам. Предлагам се да се върнем обратно. Само ще помоля, тук има един списък, може да се пишете в него с имейл за обратно.